Ladies and gentlemen, let's cut through the noise. In a world where everything moves fast, texting, dating, ghosting, swiping, we've forgotten one powerful truth. Real intimacy is psychological before it is physical. This isn't about sex. It's about understanding that you don't get to her body until you've been allowed into her mind. The modern woman isn't just turned on by touch. She's turned on by thought, by presence, by energy, by intention. Every woman is wired to desire differently, and yet there is an undeniable truth that runs deep across all of them. Before a woman gives you her body, her soul wants to know you've earned it, and not through superficial effort, but through connection, consistency, and understanding. You see, we live in a world that glorifies instant gratification, where people believe that with the right line or gesture, intimacy can be unlocked like a password. But that isn't how deep, lasting, passionate connection works, not for someone who values herself and knows the difference between lust and real intimacy. Her body is not a door you barge into. It's a sacred space you're invited into, when trust has been built slowly, patiently, and with genuine interest. And that interest, it doesn't begin with your hands or your lips. It begins with your presence, your tone, your energy. It begins with how you make her feel when she talks, when she laughs, when she shares parts of herself not everyone gets to see. It's in the way you look at her, like you're not trying to figure out how to get her clothes off, but how to get into her mind, how to explore the way she thinks, how she sees the world, how she processes pain, passion, dreams, and fears. Because when a woman feels like you actually want to know her, not just own her for a night, something shifts, her guard lowers, her inner voice whispers that you might be different. And in that moment, you are no longer just a man trying to get her. You are someone who is genuinely trying to understand her. It's so rare today to meet someone who listens without an agenda, who looks without expectation, who engages without manipulation, and yet that's the very thing that disarms her and draws her in. Women don't want perfection. They want attention, not the needy kind, but the intentional kind. They want presence. They want to feel that when they speak, you're not just waiting for your turn to impress or respond, but that you're actually absorbing her words like they mean something. That her voice is not background noise to your own desires, but music you want to play on repeat until you understand every note, every pause, every rhythm. That's where the real power is, not in touching her skin, but in touching the part of her that most people ignore, her mind. When a woman feels seen, really seen, she begins to unfold. She begins to trust that maybe, just maybe, she can reveal more of herself, that she can share her fears without judgment, that she can express her passion without feeling used, that she can be strong without intimidating you and soft without being taken for granted. This is the kind of connection that creates anticipation, desire, and eventually physical chemistry that's not just satisfying, it's explosive because it's grounded in something deeper. When a woman's mind is stimulated, when she feels safe and valued, her body follows naturally. She no longer feels the need to protect herself with sarcasm, with silence, or with distance. She starts to invite you in, and that invitation is the most powerful thing you can ever receive, not because it's given easily, but because it's earned through patience, authenticity, and emotional intelligence. Most men misunderstand what seduction truly is because they've been conditioned to think it's about action. What you say, what you do, how fast you move, how dominant you can appear. But real seduction isn't loud, it isn't rushed, and it's definitely not forced. It's in the stillness, in the wait. Your energy fills the space without demanding attention, in the way you make her feel when you're simply present, not performing, not calculating, just fully there, fully in the moment. Because presence is what she craves more than pressure. She wants to feel that you are with her, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, energetically. And you can't fake that. Presence can't be mimicked with smooth lines or copied behaviors. It's something that's cultivated from within, a sense of awareness, of mindfulness, of being grounded in your own masculinity without using it as a weapon. And when a man is truly present, he becomes magnetic, because women sense it, they feel it instantly. They recognize the difference between a man who is trying to impress and a man who is simply connected to himself and to her in that moment without the need to prove anything. Presence is seduction, because it allows her to let go, to lean in, to breathe without feeling like she has to constantly guard herself from expectations or assumptions. And that is incredibly rare in today's world where everyone seems to be rushing to get somewhere, to seal the deal, to move from conversation to contact, without letting tension build, without letting the silence speak, without letting desire simmer slowly. And that's the key. It's the slow burn that drives her wild, not the quick strike, because when you're present, she feels chosen in that moment, not as a prize, but as a person worth knowing, worth discovering. And that kind of attention is intoxicating. It's not just romantic, it's healing, because most people go through life without ever really being seen, being heard, being felt on that level. It's in the eye contact you hold without flinching or looking away, in the pauses you allow, in conversation that aren't awkward but intentional, in the questions you ask that aren't for the sake of small talk but rooted in genuine curiosity, in how you respond not just to what she says but how she says it, how her tone shifts, how her eyes reveal more than her words. It's all in details, and you can't pick up on those if you're not truly present, if your mind is somewhere else, strategizing, comparing, judging, or calculating your next move. Women know when your attention is divided, when you're physically close but mentally distant, and that disconnect is enough to shut down everything that could have bloomed if only you had stayed with her in that moment. When you master the art of presence, you don't need tricks or tactics. Your stillness becomes seductive, your calmness becomes captivating, your restraint becomes powerful, because what you're doing is creating space for her to be herself, to show you who she is beyond the surface. And in that space is where true intimacy begins to form, where her walls begin to lower, not because you broke them down, but because you honored them, respected them, and chose not to push but to patiently remain. And that presence, that emotional anchoring, tells her that you're safe, not boring, not passive, but safe. And that safety is what unlocks her deepest desires, her hidden fantasies, her full expression, not just sexually but emotionally, spiritually, and mentally. Emotional intelligence is the secret weapon that most men never tap into because they're too focused on the surface level, on what they can do, what they can show, how they can appear strong or desirable. But what they don't realize is that a woman is far more drawn to how you make her feel than what you own or how you look. And the man who knows how to read emotions, regulate his own, and respond to hers with sensitivity and strength is the man who will always stand out in a world full of shallow distractions, because emotional intelligence is not about being soft or weak. It's about being aware, attuned, and intentional in your responses. It's about knowing when to speak and when to simply listen, when to act and when to just be present, when to lead and when to support, and most importantly, it's about being able to hold space for her without making it about you. When a woman is upset or overwhelmed, she's not always looking for you to solve her problems. What she really wants is to feel like you understand her, like you're with her in that emotional moment, not trying to minimize it or change it or escape it, but simply holding it with her. And that takes emotional strength, the kind of strength that doesn't flinch when things get intense or uncomfortable, the kind that stays steady without trying to control or fix. And in doing so, you create safety, not just the physical kind, but the emotional kind, the kind that tells her she doesn't have to perform, doesn't have to shrink, doesn't have to harden herself just to be around you, because you can handle her vulnerability without running, mocking, or shutting down. A man who is emotionally intelligent knows that it's not about dominating the room or always having the last word. It's about knowing the power of calm energy, of patience, of subtlety, because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is make someone feel seen without having to say much at all. And that requires you to be connected to yourself first, to have done the inner work, to understand your own triggers, your patterns, your wounds, because you can't offer emotional safety to someone else if you're still at war with yourself. If you haven't made peace with your own emotions, you'll always try to silence or escape hers, And that's when the disconnect begins. She's watching how you handle disappointment, how you deal with conflict, how you respond when you don't get your way, because those are the moments when your emotional intelligence is tested, not when things are smooth, but when things are rough, uncomfortable, uncertain. And if you can stay grounded in those moments, not reactive, not defensive, but present and respectful, she will feel that, she will respect that, and she will begin to open up in ways that most men never get to experience because they're too quick to get frustrated, to blame, to shut down, to invalidate her feelings just because they don't understand them, when you can show her that you are a man who can sit with her pain without making it about your ego, that you can celebrate her wins without feeling threatened, that you can communicate without aggression or withdrawal. That's when you become unforgettable, because you've now separated yourself from the noise, from the men who only chase her body, but can't handle her heart, from the ones who say the right things but fall apart the moment emotions get real. And in that space of emotional depth, intimacy begins to build on a whole different level, a level where sex becomes more than just pleasure. It becomes connection, vulnerability, trust, and release, not just for her but for you too, because when emotional intelligence enters the room, everything else changes, the energy shifts, the barriers fall, and suddenly, what could have been just another encounter becomes something meaningful, magnetic, and deeply fulfilling in a way that surface-level charm never could be. Touch begins long before your fingers ever meet her skin. It starts with the way you speak to her, the way you look at her, the energy behind your words, the rhythm of your tone, the pauses between your sentences, the intentionality behind your compliments, your curiosity, your conversation, because for a woman who values emotional and mental connection, foreplay doesn't happen in the bedroom. It happens in the build-up, in the subtle dance of words and feelings, in the way you make her feel seen, wanted, and respected through the power of language that carries depth and meaning rather than empty praise or recycled lines. It happens when you speak to her as if she's more than a body, when your words make her feel cherished, not conquered, when you say things that activate her imagination, her intellect, her desires on a level that's layered and rich, because when you stimulate her mind, you awaken parts of her that few ever reach. It's not about being poetic or smooth all the time. It's about being real, about speaking with honesty and warmth, about choosing words that show presence, attention, and emotional attunement. It's in how you ask about her day, not just out of routine, but because you genuinely want to know how she experienced the world in the last 24 hours. It's how you notice the shift in her mood even when she doesn't speak, how you pick up on the slight hesitation in her voice or the brightness in her eyes and respond accordingly. That is foreplay to a woman who is tired of being misunderstood, overlooked, or treated like a checkbox on someone's ego trip. Because when she feels heard, when she feels safe, when she feels that you see all of her, the strong parts, the soft parts, the insecure, and the powerful all at once, that's when her body begins to relax into you without resistance. Your words carry energy and intention. They either draw her in or push her away. And what most don't realize is that the body doesn't forget how it feels when it's spoken to with care, or when it's disrespected by careless speech. A woman remembers the conversations that made her feel desired without being objectified, the moments when someone spoke to her like her mind mattered just as much as her curves, and that memory lives in her body. It becomes the foundation for how she responds to you, how she lets go with you, how she opens up with you. So when you speak to her, speak not just to impress but to connect. Speak to create emotional closeness, not just chemistry, because that closeness is what makes everything else more intense, more passionate, more satisfying. When you use your words to uplift her, to affirm her, to play with her, to flirt with her in a way that shows you're paying attention to who she really is, not who you imagine her to be, you create a mental and emotional buildup that no touch can replicate, because now she's aroused not just physically, but mentally, and that mental arousal amplifies every physical sensation tenfold. It's not about quantity of words, it's about quality, about whether those words carry weight, sincerity, humor, vulnerability, and intrigue. And when they do, you become more than just another guy trying to get her attention. You become someone who ignites something deeper, something lasting, something she starts to crave even when you're not around. Your words have the power to turn her on or turn her off, to create anticipation or anxiety, to bring her closer or make her retreat, and that power should never be taken lightly, because for the kind of woman who lives in her head as much as her heart, who seeks depth over performance, whose intimacy is rooted in trust and safety and shared mental space, the way you speak to her is everything. And if you learn to use that power with integrity and awareness, you won't need to rush her body into anything, because her mind will already be halfway undressed, ready, willing, and eager to follow where the connection leads, without fear, without pressure, without hesitation. Just pure alignment and flow that builds from the inside out. There's something profoundly powerful about moving slow, about resisting the urge to rush, to push, to force things into happening before their time, especially when it comes to intimacy, connection, and desire. Because in a world that celebrates fast everything, fast food, fast love, fast replies, fast results, we've forgotten the art of patience. Power of building something that's not just immediate but magnetic, meaningful, and unforgettable. And when it comes to seduction, to creating a connection that lingers long after the lights go out, slow is not a weakness, it's a superpower, because slow says, I'm not desperate, I'm not here just to consume you, I'm here to experience you, to understand you, to take in every layer of you without skipping any steps. Moving slowly tells her you respect her boundaries, that you're reading her energy, that you're aware enough to know that real chemistry doesn't come from rushing into her space, but from being invited in because you've created comfort, safety, and anticipation. It tells her that you don't need to perform or pretend, because you trust the process of connection, and you understand that real intimacy begins not with the body but with trust, and trust isn't built in haste. It's built in the silences, the eye contact, the vulnerable exchanges, the moments when she feels like she can breathe around you, like she's not just another woman you're trying to win over, but someone whose presence you truly value and are willing to explore with intention. When you slow down, you give her space to feel, to respond, to express herself without pressure, and in doing so, you separate yourself from the noise, from the men who move fast because they fear depth, because they're chasing outcomes rather than connection. But you're not chasing. You're creating, you're building, you're savoring, and that energy alone is enough to disarm her, to make her curious, to make her wonder what makes you different, why your presence feels more grounded, more confident, more real, and that curiosity turns into interest, and that interest turns into desire, and that desire grows when you continue to show that your patience isn't an act, it's your nature, your strength, your standard. The best kind of seduction isn't loud, it's subtle, it's in the way you lean in but don't smother, in the way you touch with meaning instead of impulse, in the way your words land with weight, because you're not just trying to fill space but to build a connection. And when she sees that, when she feels that, her guard begins to soften, not because you've manipulated her, but because you've honored her, because you've created a dynamic where she feels emotionally held before being physically touched, where she feels chosen not for what she can give you but for who she is becoming in your presence. And that is the deepest kind of intimacy. The kind that happens slowly, over time, with care, intention, and awareness. Slow doesn't mean passive. It doesn't mean you're not interested. It means you're present, in tune, aware of the moment, and unwilling to rush something that has the potential to be extraordinary. And in that slowness, in that control, in that restraint, you create a buildup that no amount of physical touch can replicate, because you're not just touching her skin, you're touching her anticipation, her mind, her soul, and that makes everything that follows so much more intense, more satisfying, more memorable, because she knows it's not just about the end goal. It's about the experience, the connection, the unfolding of something real, something rare, something worth savoring slowly, fully, and without apology for the pace it takes to get there. So let me leave you with this. If all you're chasing is the body, you'll miss the woman. But if you learn to understand, explore, and honor her mind, you'll unlock a kind of intimacy, passion, and connection that goes beyond anything physical. Don't rush the pussy. F*C*K her brain slowly first. Not with arrogance, but with art, awareness, and emotional depth. That's where real power lives, that's where love begins, and that's the kind of man she never forgets.